The SuperGP Champions Trophy is proudly brought to you by Digital Entertainment On Demand and their associate sponsors.
So it's the beginning of a brand new season. 2015 starts off at Phakisa Raceway in the Free State. The SuperGP Champions Trophy is going to be seeing a lot of new muscle, a lot of new riders, and a lot of new sponsors coming on board, and it is going to be a very tough season.
Yeah, we saw some amazing action, and we're looking forward to more of the same here at round number 1 as we head into the 2015 season and look and see exactly who's changed to what machinery and what new sponsors are on board.
So the incredible race circuit of Phakisa Raceway, custom built for superbike racing. 5 rounds of the MotoGP Championship have graced this paddock and this raceway, and the track is holding up absolutely perfectly. A firm favourite among all of the National Championship competitors.
And new National Championship competitors arrive for the very first time in the form of the Super Juniors. On KTM 390s, it's great to see a new championship stepping up as part of the feeding class for SuperGP.
Remember, we are also trying to see if the reigning champions from the previous season can defend their titles. It's a great place to start off a campaign.
Great to see Rad Motos and KTM South Africa getting behind this and putting together 8 bikes for the start of the season. There's plenty more headed our way as we head around the country, and I'm sure all 8 riders are looking forward to getting out for the very first time onto the freeway.
These bikes very much in line with the international standard, one of the categories that races on the European circuit, and that's the whole idea of this category, trying to get us on pace with the world.
As they come to line up for race number 1, Dos Lareo, our reigning 250cc champion, is on pole position. Cameron Aitken alongside him, and then it's William Friend. A welcome return to racing after international duties at the Red Bull Rookie Cup.
So some of the best riders coming out of the regional categories. Early problems though for William Friend as he qualifies 3rd place but gets shoved off the line. His bike would not start. Confirmation though, Greg, of the qualifying results.
Lareo, Aitken and Friend, Coccione, Doyle, Ecote and Joubert.
So this is going to be a bit of a situation. Teething problems for Friend, but we know he has got a lot of skill in the bag and he can go running and hunting. Lareo, and it's going to be up to Aitken to do all the big chasing in the early stages.
Great start from Doran Lareo. He gets the whole shot. Cameron Aitken into 2nd. What a start from Jenna Claire Ecote. She moves into 3rd place. Dominic Doyle on her tail as they go through turn 1. It's a never-ending left-hander. And in fact, through that left-hander, it looked like Aitken had a lot more speed than what Doran Lareo was able to get.
It's the way that he rides as well. The little kid has insane entry speed at mid-corner, and that allows him to get the drive up. He's out of position though, because now it is a never-ending set of right-handers. He had 3 looks at trying to do the cutback there, couldn't make it count. Finally, 3rd fastest qualifier, William Friend, goes out, and he's got a big chase on now.
Even though he looked back coming out of pit lane, he didn't have to worry about
looking
anything.
out for who?
Yeah, that's what I was about to say. No one out there to worry about because they're all up ahead, and lots of work to do for William Friend, but I'm sure he'll be able to close down and possibly even get back up onto the podium.
It was a wonderful 3-way doing all the chasing, but you could see straight away that the top 2 were head and shoulders ahead of the rest, qualifying on a 1:57, 1:58. The chase group unable to break the 2-minute bracket in qualifying.
Yeah, it was awesome to see them get under the 2-minute bracket as they came back into the midway through this pack, and you could see things starting to close up in the background. Coccione putting a move on Jenna Claire. She managed to hang on for a little bit longer, but Doyle and Coccione looking dangerous.
Yeah, Rhino Joubert as well. He was doing really well in the regional series, but falling off the pace quite early on in the race. The big kid, one of the heaviest riders, and unable to run with the big numbers. Finally, Aitken was able to show his wheel up the front, but would the lightweight rider be able to check out ahead of the 250 Cup champion?
Not going to be easy to do that with Doran Lareo right on your tail and pushing hard, and the 2 of them pushing these bikes to their limits. Remember, these are all still under development, very much so. So there's lots of things still to be tweaked around, suspension to be checked, how well the tyres are going to work, because for this round, they were allowed to run the Metzlers and the Pirellis. However, by the next round, the Pirellis would be the standard option, as it is for the rest of the Super GP category.
Aitken was finding the limit. Lareo looked a little bit more comfortable, more confident, and much more planted, and the bigger framed rider was able to muscle the slightly bigger bike around. Remember, Aitken coming off a 150 Cup championship win 2 years ago and into the 250 Cup for the first time, and just slightly battling with the bigger bike.
Now, problems as they went into the bottom section of the circuit for Aitken. He came into Discover Digital in 2nd place after running wide through the toe of the boot.
Yeah, he would have to do all the big numbers and chase up. Here was the line where Lareo was able to shove it up the inside, and little Aitken Oh, he's a fighter, though. He's like a terrier, just doesn't let it go, stays on the pipe and rails it around the outside.
I love the fact that you got Doran looking at him the whole time. About 4 or 5 times he looked across to make sure that Aitken wasn't in the move that he wanted to pull. And problems going into turn 1. And as I said, development on these bikes is certainly going to be the key for the beginning of the season. The front end didn't look good there, and unfortunately, as Aitken stood up, he didn't look good either.
Yeah, Aitken he actually rolled off, got on the brakes at the little braking bump. The front end started to wag out, and those skinny little arms, he just could not bring that thing back online, and eventually he had to just bow out, and the bike went and kissed the tires.
Yeah, unfortunately, it was him out for race number 1 and possibly for race 2. We'd have to wait and see if they get the bike all sorted out and whether he could come back. Speaking of comebacks, the biggest comeback of the day came from William Friend and started to tick them off one by one, starting with Jenna Claire as he came through and got past Dominic Doyle behind her. He'd found a way past him and now was looking up the road to try and find Luca Caccioni.
Yeah, Friend at this stage was the fastest man on circuit. Remember, Loureiro was out front with no pressure on him at all, but Friend had all the pressure on himself trying to close things down. He got up onto the back wheel of Caccioni, who by this stage was running a very lonely second place, and the big kid, William Friend, Wild Will, shoved it up the inside to tick off another one. Clear air for the first time for him, but a long way up the road. It was second place now.
Into second place and heading into Discover Digital. Unfortunately, it didn't look like there was any answer to Dos Loureiro at the front end. He was going to lead things out and have no more issues. The back end, though, it wasn't done just yet. Doyle still fighting with Eckhout.
Yeah, fourth place, and those were the guys that were grouped, and girls that were grouped together very, very closely in the early stages. But as the race went on, it splintered completely. Doyle was the kid that seemed to come on strong towards the end of the race, and Jenna Claire, unfortunately, was suffering a bit of fade at this stage and getting left out the back door and hung out to dry.
The one issue that we had to take into account, which of course Doran would not suffer with, was the length of the race. None of these riders had gone out and done 12 laps of action around the Phakisa Freeway before. So a slightly longer race for these youngsters would mean that they'd have to get onto their bikes, into the gym, and get some fitness done.
Yeah, Loureiro was on good form. A full 18 seconds back, William Friend did the unthinkable, starting out of pit lane with a deficit of almost a minute to make up. Came through, got his second place, only 18.2 seconds back. Caccioni got his third place, and the fourth place battle was won out by Dominic Doyle, beating Jenna Claire Eckhout by a few tenths to the line.
Great racing for the very first time in the Super Juniors, and looking forward to more of the same as they made their way for the podium ceremony.
Doran Loureiro had set himself up for the perfect start to the season. After this, he was going to be heading across to Europe, and he would be representing for South Africa. William Friend, a star of the future for sure, coming off his incredible qualifying in third place to go one place up to second. Cam Aitken, after running strong in second, had to step out, which meant Caccioni was on the box.
Hello, I'm Dominic Doyle, currently racing in the Super Juniors, and this is my NGL logistics delivered to you in 60 seconds. My proudest moment was last race meeting when I got a double podium at Red Star. My favourite racetrack is Red Star Raceway because I got a double podium there last race. My favourite superhero is Superman. Nando's a KFC. Oh, it has to be Nando's. My favourite sport besides motorsport would probably be cycling. MotoGP or SBK would probably be MotoGP. My motorbike sounds like brap brap. My most prized possession would probably be my dog. My favorite sports car would probably be a Porsche. Mountain bike or road bike? Probably a mountain bike. My favorite cartoon would probably be Tom and Jerry. Twitter or Instagram? That would probably be Instagram because I don't have Twitter. My biggest rival is probably myself.
Straight into race 2 action now, and all part and parcel of the day's action. Race 2 was going to be an interesting affair. Would William Friend be able to get a little bit higher up, considering the fact that he didn't have to start out of pit lane?
No show for Cam Aitken this time around, so a big shuffle, and everyone would try and run the pace. The incredibly strong starting Jenna Claire Eckhout would have to just work on her form and try and run the second half of the race as well as she does the first.
Off the line, it's William Friend and Doran Loureiro that head down towards turn 1. Unfortunately, Cam Aitken not making it out after that injury, so he'd be sitting on the sideline and watching all his good friends go at it on the black stuff.
Wild William Friend didn't have to start from pit lane this time around, so the two big kids coming out of incredible form from the 250 Regional Cup would be able to stretch away in the early stages. Dominic Doyle in the early part of the race though was running a strong third place, but remember, Caccioni was able to run faster laps. If Caccioni couldn't get through in the early stages, the third place dice would start falling off the back wheel.
Doran already looking back and picturing what's going to happen between himself and William Friend as they head down into the toe of the boot for the very first time. Friend already going late on the brakes, and up the inside, Doran Lareo now going to fight it out for the honours for 1 and 2 on the track. A little bit of a gap down to third place with Doyle leading the battle at that stage.
Doyle and Coccione, Jenny-Claire Eckhout was grouped a little bit further back, but staying away from Reiner Joubert, and the big guy just couldn't figure out the big circuit. The two compatriots out front were definitely taking turns. Who wants to lead this lap? Let's put on a show. William Friend and Doran Larero putting it on and just making sure that the Super Juniors arrived with style.
Yeah, the reason they were taking it a little bit easier is that the rain flag came out and it looked like a little bit of wet weather was going to be a concern for some of the riders. We'd have to wait and see whether the tyres would be able to take it. This is the first time they'd be tested in the dry, and now the first time tested in the wet.
Yeah, speaking to all the manufacturers, they said these tyres shouldn't fall off, but as soon as they get a little bit wet, it's going to be wild. Wild William Friend, though, didn't mind throwing the dice. He wouldn't mind paying the price, but this time he held on to it. Lareo took him all the way to the curb, though, and it was starting to block out, and this was the final turn.
Into the final turn, unfortunately, a problem for Doran. He twisted it a little bit too hard and roly-poly into the kitty litter into NGL Logistics Solutions.
Yeah, offline, trying to run too tight a line there and defend, and he definitely find the front end limits of that machine. He would have to pick himself up, but the top two had such a massive gap. Lareo was still able to pick himself up and finish the race. There he was, completely offline. Everyone who knows the track knows that there is no pass underway there, and the front end said no more. Wild William Friend, though, turnaround day for him. Qualified in third, got second in heat number 1, and he won out the whole thing in heat number 2.
Yeah, a great effort from Friend. Coccione in second place and Dominic Doyle in third. They'd be up on the podium. Jenna Claire in fourth place, a good effort from her. Ronald Chabert in fifth, and eventually Lareo across the line in sixth.
So a couple of bikes getting thrown down the road, but what an arrival for the Super Juniors.
Well, I was chasing Luca a lot. Oh, I was in front of him, and then he eventually got past, but I couldn't catch up, so I tried.
I realized that I had to get past all of the through Dominique and Jenna before, so I could try and catch up to William and then, but they were just too fast.
Yeah, it was a great race in the second heat. I paced myself at first just to relax a bit. The last few laps I started pushing hard and it worked. I'd like to thank KTM, Uncle Dave and Uncle Vaughan and my parents for making this opportunity possible.
Stay with us, because after the break, we've got the Super 600s and Super GPs to come.
Welcome back to the Diode SuperGP Champions Trophy and straight into race number 1 of the Super 600s.
Stephen Odendahl, defending champion, the big number 1 plate, and all the youngsters are coming after him. What a lineup and what a field we have for the 2015 season.
Kawasaki front row there with Adolf Boshoff and Michael White. Remember, Stephen Odendahl on the Kawasaki just for this round, waiting for the new Yamaha to arrive.
Everyone going to be pushing on. Incredible pace coming out of the kids as well. Stephen Odendahl qualifies on a 140 flat. Adolf Boshoff joins him on the front row with Magic Mike White. Blaze Baker, Alan John Fenter, and Nicole van Ospeken heading up row number 2.
There was Dylan Barnard, Malcolm Rudman and Jesse Boshoff. First time out for him on board the MTech Racing Nashua-sponsored Yamaha. And Anthony Lessing, Corbin McCullum and Ricky Lee Weir at the back.
A 12-rider lineup. It would be busy, busy, busy with a 14 laps for the kids to go play. The Brat Pack out, and it was the Pocket Rocket once again. Stephen Odendahl with a stellar start, but look at the 2 triumphs. AJ Fent and Nicole van Ospeken splitting it up, going all the way from row number 2, jumping up into second and third.
Yeah, a great start from AJ, just shows the kind of experience he's had, not only here in South Africa, but also internationally. And of course, he'll be heading that way a little bit later in the season, back to the Isle of Man to do some duties there for the Top Gun Racing team. But as they came down into the toe of the boot, Adolf Boshoff wasn't letting Nicole get away and moved up into third place, and then looked for an opportunity to get past AJ.
Slid on through. The big loser off the line, unfortunately, Magic Mike White couldn't figure things out. Blaze Baker also, he was around about his qualifying spot. Rudman going way wide and losing a ton of positions. He joined right at the back.
Got some work to do there, Rudman, now that he'd run wide. It's not easy to get through 12 riders, especially when you're in the mid-pack. Boshoff was putting pressure at the front end and looking left, right, and around the outside for a chance to get past on Fenter.
The only guy that will go that wide this early on. Remember, the tyres were still very cold, and Boshoff was doing a great job. Finally, the second place qualifier got up into his qualifying spot of second, but he was running some wild lines, and the Cowboy was earning his nickname again.
AJ tried to come back at him, but just gave him a little bit of room as they came back onto the main straight. got a slightly better drive through that last corner and retook second place. So chopping and changing was expected in this race, and Nicole van Osvegen incredibly up into fourth place, fighting with Baker and White for that fourth place.
The second place dice was slowing down the pace for sure and allowing all the advantage to Odendaal. He was gone at this stage and pulling out almost 10 seconds above the rest.
Nicole van Osvegen now took the mantle that Adolf Boshoff had left once he got past Alan John Venter, and now looked to possibly even get up onto the podium. That would be the second time at the Phakisa Freeway that we had an opportunity of a lady rider getting onto the podium. And this would be the first official national championship lady rider, of course, who'd step it up.
Magic Mike White, he was doing a good job. Nicole side through and got the move on AJ Fender as his tires started to fade off around the mid-race distance. But Magic Mike White had come around Blaze Baker, and the 58 was on the fly now.
Incredible stuff here with the two Triumphs and the two Kawasaki's. KMSA products in the house as they went down through the faster sweep on this circuit. Baker trying to use the outside line. Watch for the cutback as he heads down into Gilkop, the final turn. Of course, Pirelli sponsoring it this day. And now onto the braking markers. Baker outgunned by Magic Mike.
Mike and Baker were definitely getting blocked out. They would have to find another position. It looked like it was going to be the big straight and the sweeper that turned things around. Baker had regrouped. Didn't want to be at the back of the pack anymore. He was going to be the Kawasaki now to go after the two Triumphs.
He'd lead the way in terms of Kawasaki, and he'd also be looking for an opportunity to possibly get onto the podium and spoil it for the two Triumph riders. But if he ran wide like that, Magic Mike would be looking, and certainly was looking dangerous.
Stephen Odendaal, remember, he was gone, running out front on the Neo Life machine and Brad Onassis Racing to try and claim another national championship. AJ Fenter doing all kinds of outbreaking maneuvers. He couldn't get the squirt on power, and Magic Mike could. It was going to be tears at bedtime for this, because four riders cannot run this close the whole way through, and it was getting gnarly.
Out of NGL, you can see just how gnarly it was getting. Have a look at this. Onto the inside, Alan John Venter outbreaks everybody else, makes both Nicole and Blaze sit up, then cuts back and forces Magic Mike to climb on the brakes as well, which steps him out of the saddle. And well done to Magic Mike for hanging on.
That four-way split for third place was making everyone bite their fingernails. We were on the last lap though, and Odendaal had stretched out more than 15 seconds, the entire start-finish straight plus VAT.
Yeah, awesome stuff from the reigning champion. Adolf Boshoff had tried hard to catch him, but was found wanting yet today. He'd have to go back and do some homework for the second heat. The Indy Oil and Toy Store Kawasaki. He was looking good on that bike. But now the battle was definitely for third place.
To start off the final lap, Magic Mike had finally got himself through into third place and was trying desperately to get rid of the rest. It looked like he had the power, it looked like he had enough rubber to try and stay away. The danger man in this group, though, on his back wheel was definitely Blaze Baker.
Baker sneaking up as they went into turn 2 and forced AJ wide. AJ had no answer, tried to come back just to keep Nicole van Osvegen at bay, and fortunately was able to do that. But the two Kawasaki's had now got through, and it was Kawasaki's 1, 3, and 4. In fact, 1, 2, 3, and 4, because the Cowboy was up there as well.
Yeah, remember that. The 132 of Adolf Boshoff was flying, but he was starting to fade towards the end there as well, and it looked like he almost got caught at the flag. Yes, he'll say he rolled it off, but Magic Mike was pushing on and put his fastest 2 laps in on the penultimate and final lap. He got his third place.
Odendaal with a high five there. He took the position in first by 13 seconds ahead of Adolf Boshoff and Michael White. Blaze Baker in fourth place ahead of Alan John Venter. Then it was Nicole van Osvegen. She beat out Jesse Boshoff, Malcolm Rodman, Dylan Barnard, and Anthony Lessing.
The first race of the season in the Super 600s, showing what an incredible 2015 season we are setting up to have.
Stephen Odendaal setting the best lap of a 1:45.99, a new lap record there for the Neo Life Racing team.
Good news is 12 riders started, 12 riders ended, so everyone would be sharpening their pencils, getting ready for heat number 2 later on in the day.
We knew they were going to be good just because I know AJ and how he rides, so I expected him to be up there, but both of them at the same time it's a bit hard to get past, and halfway through I lost both my knee siders, so I had to ride with my elbows half the time and nearly ran into Blaze a few times, and yeah, trying to catch the oaks in front is just very, very hard when you got those knee siders, 2 Triumphs.
Hi, I'm Stephen Odendaal. I'm racing for the Yamaha Neo Life Super 600 racing team, and this is my NGL logistics brought to you in 60 seconds. My proudest moment is racing in the MotoGP Moto2 category. My favorite racetrack on the SuperGP calendar has to be Phakisa. My favorite superhero must be SpongeBob SquarePants. Blonde or brunette? Blonde, because my girlfriend's blonde. Nando's or KFC? Nando's. It's finger licking good. My favorite sport besides motorsport has to be cycling. MotoGP or SPK? MotoGP. What does my motorbike sound like? My biggest rival is everyone that's competing with me. My most prized possession has to be my bicycle. My favorite sports car, McLaren. Mountain bike or road bike? Mountain bike. My favorite actress, Selena Gomez. Toto Instagram? Instagram.
Heading forward into heat number 2, more than a chance of rain, little bit of spitting going on, and some very concerned faces on the start lineup.
Stephen Undal will be looking to give it full gas as always on the Neo Life racing machine and be looking forward to a double on the day. Was it able to be pulled off?
Adolf Boshoff, unfazed by the changing weather, he knew that he would be able to ride around in these conditions because he has a great setup. Magic Mike, he would be on the front row for his second qualifying lap a little bit earlier on the day, would get him all the way up there. This time, he would have to just fire it off the line and stay ahead of all of the chasers to try and run with the top 2.
The consortium shipping man will be looking to take that man on. Muscle and Fitness Gym. Blaze Baker had a great outing in the first one. Could he get a better one here in race number 2?
Remember the 2 triumphs, fire off the line, absolutely stellar. AJ Fenter almost got that 3rd place in race number 1, and on his shoulder would be his teammate, Nicole van Ospeken. The 2 triumphs, so good at the early part of the race.
Auto Armour and, of course, Full Throttle backing the Triumph South Africa man. And Women in Motorsport backing the Triumph Lady in race number 2.
14 laps, once again, changeable conditions, but it looked like the clouds and the wind were up, so it wouldn't be super wet, but it'd just be enough to make the guys scratch their heads in the early part until they knew how it was standing out there.
How much grip was available for the Pirelli rubber as they went into turn 1? Well, they all found out pretty rapidly. Heading out of turn 1, Undal had a big chase on from Blaze Baker and Alan John Fenter. The Cowboy in 4th place, Nicole van Ospeken just behind him. Then it was Rudman with a much better start this time. And in fact, such a good start from Anthony Lessing too. First time out for him in National Super 600 racing. Great to see the youngster stepping up and going so well right out the gates.
Baker was holding nothing back, and he got an aggressive move early on to see clear air. He was obviously very comfortable with these conditions and was playing the mind game. He may not have been comfortable with the conditions, but he was telling everyone else that he was.
As they went into Discover Digital, foot out for him, just to show anybody if they want to go up the inside, they're not going to be able to make it stick through there. And as they headed up to the Incinis, it was a bit of a charge coming from behind now, and it was coming from the Cowboy. He meant business. He'd lost out on the line and certainly had to get up for another podium. If he had to do that, he was going to have to push extremely hard and get past Michael White first.
Yeah, the top 5 riders were freight training it away. No good start this time around for Nicole van Ospeken. She could not run, and Rudman had done an incredible job. He was trying to bridge the gap. He was heading up the chasers.
That guy, Jesse Bossoff, was right there as well. As we go back to the leaders, you can see just how hard Alan John was having to push to stay with the 2 Kawasaki's. The 3rd Kawasaki now on his tail, and in fact the 4th one right behind him as well. So he was kind of the burger between the tomatoes and lettuce of that sandwich.
Adolf Boshoff had started to climb up the ladder. He was 5th the previous lap. He got a move on through, got ahead of Magic Mike White, and now he was sizing up the Triumph. AJ Fender was definitely having some problems, running some funky lines, trying to defend the inside the whole way.
Yeah, trying to keep the 2 cars behind him and try and hunt down the 2 in front of him. Came up onto the braking markers. He'd found a way to close in on Blaze Baker, and you can see just how hard he had to work to do that. He got past Baker, coming out of the toe of the boot, and towards Discover Digital, he was now 2nd.
Baker was making mistakes. He had a terrible 2 laps, and he'd now been absorbed back into that 4-rider 2nd place dice.
Incredible stuff from the Cowboy to go around the outside of Hillcorp and into the final turn, NGL Logistics. It was the Cowboy, Adolf Boshoff, who snuck up to 3rd.
The 132 was on the move for sure, and he was definitely on to make the pass. Oh! Just completely ran out of brakes and tagged AJ Fender completely off his bike. AJ did not know what hit him, and Adolf was just so apologetic there. Looked like he completely ran out of brakes, and that was 2 of the top 2 riders gone.
You can see him very, very much not the way he wanted to end up. Just running out of brakes at the braking point, had nowhere to go. You could see him try and sit it up. And in fact, here you can go and have a look at the instant replay. He comes down to the braking point, pulls the brakes, there's nothing there. Then tries to sit the bike up and go around the outside of Alan John, but Alan was just in the way. No way for him to go, and unfortunately Alan just being tagged out there. So the Triumph rider was down, and the Indy Oil Kawasaki man was also out.
Yeah, more damage to the bike than AJ, and great to see both riders getting up. the gesticulation from the Triumph rider just saying, what on earth just happened? He'll only know when he sees a replay.
Incredible stuff here between Lessing, Ricky Leweer, and that guy, Jesse Boshoff, on the Nashua MTech Yamaha. Epic little battle here for about 5th place on track.
Yeah, this was going to close things up. Ricky Leweer, just towards the end of the race there, started having some front tire and braking problems. He'd had a problem the previous lap. This time, it bit him hard.
Yeah, unfortunately put it down and looked like a little bit of damage. That's why I didn't even try and attempt to pick the bike up. But as you can see, trying to go around the outside, force a mistake out of the Yamaha rider, and the mistake came from himself.
Yeah, the forks bottomed out, the front end tucked, and she cried no more. So 3 riders out after a very clean race number 1. Already at the halfway marker, 3 riders in the bin.
Lessing now put the pressure on and managed to find a way through on Jesse Boshoff. Boshoff came straight back at him. The two of them swapping leathers and knee sliders and some paintwork on the bikes as they came extremely close. And by doing that, they were starting to slow each other down, and Barnard had a chance of closing in.
Nice, close, physical racing, and the guys were starting to build their pace and build their confidence. Lessing, it's been a while since we've seen what the kid can do, coming all the way from regional 150 and 250 Cup racing. He does a lot of work overseas, and this year, starting to get his dial in on the 600s on the local scene.
Jesse Boshoff making a welcome return to National Championship Racing as well this weekend, and slowly but surely getting to grips with that new Yamaha. It wasn't going to be easy for him because it's not an easy bike to ride up the blocks, but of course he has got some experience, and he was trying to put that down into the black stuff as they got away, and it looked like he was starting to make a move to get away from Lessing and from Barnard.
Yeah, great regional racer. Good to see him make the big step up into full national championship racing. The flag was out though, and it was the perfect day for the Neolife Racing rider. Defending champion walked away with the top of qualifying and 2 race wins.
Battle wasn't done between Lessing, Boshoff and Barnard. Still action as they went down into the double right and towards Pirelli Gielkop. Not going to be easy for these riders to hang on. You can see just how hard Jesse was pushing. In fact, he pushed a little bit too hard and ran wide right in the closing stages. A little mistake from the rider, and it cost him dearly.
Everything she had, and that was for 6th place, which means Lessing scores his highest national finish ever at race number 2 of the opening round of the Diode SuperGP Champions Trophy in the Super 600s.
Barnard on his tail, and eventually Boshoff would get back on track and finish up in the 8th spot, just beating out Corbin McCullum and Ricky Leweer, Alan John Fenton, and Adolf Boshoff with DNFs.
Confirmation then, Odendaal takes another victory. Magic Mike White came through for a strong 2nd place after a race-long battle with Baker. Nicole van Osviken, with the demise of Boshoff and AJ, she got herself up into 4th place with Rudman, like we said, getting himself into a top 5.
I'm happy with the performance from race 2. We've been struggling all weekend with setup, and came good together at the end there. And yeah, I'd just like to thank my dad and everyone who's helped us through the weekend.
Last year we came in, we started getting better and better, but this year with consortium shipping on board, Steve Cannon, the bike was phenomenal. I honestly couldn't ask for a better bike. It just today worked, and hopefully we get one step further and we can challenge Steve in there.
No, I'm really happy with today, how it went. Couldn't ask for anything better, you know. And just want to say thanks to Neolife and Race and all the people that have been behind me, supporting me. And, you know, I'm going to get there one day to the MotoGP World Championship, and it's all because of this training.
After the break, it's the premier categories, the Super GPs and the Super Ms.
Welcome back to the Diode SuperGP Champions Trophy, and of course the Super Ms and Super GPs combined for this season. It was going to be an interesting affair. Brandon Good, for the first time out on the Yamaha and part of the MTech racing team, would certainly be feeling the pressure a little bit, I would say. But now that he's on this new team, development will happen on this bike, and eventually they're going to get that brand new R1. When it comes along, both him and his teammate are certainly going to be in the hunt.
It was Super Bowl time as well. That's the way we kick off things in the Super GPs. Good was the first rider to go out and try and improve on his pre-qualifying time on his one and only big flying lap.
He finished 7th overall in the qualifying, and it would be interesting to see whether he could better that. He was down into the 1 minute 40 bracket, and unfortunately could only get into the 141s for his Super Pole lap.
The Yamahas knew that they were in for a fight. Like you said, Greg, the early part of the season would just be a survival mode as they were on the old equipment waiting for the new toys to arrive. Good though, looked very comfortable and was even able to run his hottest ever lap at Phakisa on the old Yami.
He was looking good, but unfortunately it wasn't going to be good enough. Brandon Good comes across the line and he finishes exactly where he started, 7th place overall in the Super Pole.
That would be him, though, on the score sheets. He was going to be able to make the full lineup. Remember, later on in the day, they would go into a 15-lap race. Lance Isaacs was enjoying the changeable conditions in the Super Pole situation, and the man who was looking to nail down his first ever National Superbike Championship would start things off here at Super Pole.
On the Black Swan BMW, he was looking very tasty, finished 4th place in the qualifying and was looking to get onto the front row. I think the front row is quite crucial here, especially in the Superbikes.
Yeah, he needed a front row start. He wanted to run with clear air or whoever was running alongside him on the front row, and Isaacs can throw the big laps when he wants to.
Comes through for 3rd place and just not good enough to get him onto the front of that front row, but he'll be happy about that. The reigning champion stepped up. He was the king of Super Pole, and he hadn't been betted. Could anybody go out and outgun him? They'd already done it in the qualifying session, and the Black Knight, Brent Herron, had gone and qualified in pole position, provisional pole, of course, until the Super Pole had been decided.
The whole way through last year, though, this man, Clinton Seller, showed that he is the king of Super Pole, knows exactly what to do every single time, and here at round number 1 of the 2015 Diode SuperGP Champions Trophy, he opened his account once again.
Still one rider to come, and could Brent Herron go and outgun him again in the Super Pole? It was going to be a difficult thing to do because he'd gone 0.4 of a second quicker than what Brent Herron was able to do in the qualifying.
Lots of pressure on the shoulders of Herron, and Herron knew coming into this season he had the form. This season he had the bike to take it all the way to the front.
The Kawasaki ZX-10 had shown promise in the previous season. He got to grips with it really quickly, and now with R&D Racing getting the preparation done, some new sponsors coming on board with Metal Center helping him out, and he was looking very, very good.
Herron was definitely a threat last season. Coming into the 2015 season, we knew that he would be able to deliver every single time, and a very polished and clean, no drama on his Super Pole lap. But would it be enough to take him all the way to the front? Front row would be good enough, but everyone wants to drop the king off his throne.
Incredible stuff out of Herron, unfortunately not quick enough, and Seller would take the Super Pole. Herron would have to settle for 2nd place and be alongside his Kawasaki mounted friend Clint Seller, and of course Lance Isaacs on the BMW.
The drama of Super Pole then setting up what would be drama going forward into the rest of the day's racing.
Everyone's in their new school clothes for the year, so it's nice to see that some different teams are there, some new guys, some new sort of manufacturers coming in with bigger backing. So that's always positive for the sport. For us, you know, we've got a great team. It doesn't matter what bike we ride. So I think that's something to look forward to for the rest of the year.
Hi, I'm Brandon Good. I race for the Nashua MTech Factory Yamaha racing team in the SuperGP Champions Trophy. And this is my NGL logistics delivered in 60 seconds. My proudest moments definitely got to be at the old Durban airport when I got my first podium. It was special to me because we'd been trying so hard the whole year, and we definitely finally made it work, and it showed us that hard work definitely did pay off. My favorite racetrack on the SuperGP calendar has definitely got to be the old Durban airport. Pity we aren't racing there anymore, but that was definitely the best. My favorite superhero has definitely got to be Valentino Rossi. Blonde or brunette, got to be whatever color my girlfriend says at the time. Nando's or KFC, definitely got to be Nando's. Favorite sport besides motorsport, I wasn't sure there were other sports. MotoGP or SBK, it's got to be World Superbikes because it's definitely closer to our racing than any other racing, so it's easy to compare. What does my motorbike sound like? My biggest rival, it depends on the track. My most prized possession's got to be my Nashua MTech Yamaha R1. My favorite sports car has got to be any car that has 2 wheels. Mountain bike or road bike, definitely mountain bike. Favorite actress has got to be Emma Watson. Twitter or Instagram, definitely got to be Instagram because I've got no idea how Twitter works.
Reigning champion then on pole position once again. Slightly longer lap for the Premier category, 15 laps all in all, and the front row was going to be extremely busy. Kershaw, a great qualifier for him. He would be one of those starters to watch out for.
Yeah, he was just behind Matthew Scholz on the 2nd row, 6th place Garrick Flock, and of course at the back we had to take Bo Levy, Shane Levy, Yanni Moll, Neil van Rockenberg and Gavin Breckel for the Super M category.
A tasty 12-rider lineup would see Clinton Seller heading up, but remember, on his shoulder would be his closest arch rival. It looked like the 2 Kawasaki-mounted riders at this stage of the season were going to go at it, but Lance Isaacs in good form and Phakisa a good track for him.
Scholz, Kershaw and Flock made up the 2nd row, and Flock of course would be stepping on and off various bikes trying to find one that would work the best for him in this particular category.
Yeah, Flock showed good promise and good form towards the end of the 2014 season, but this time around was battling to find setup on the bike.
Schlanger Rocket looking pretty tasty off the line as well, and went to try and outgun everybody into turn one. Would he get the whole shot? Yes, indeed he would. Matthew Scholz, followed by Heron, and the champion going around the outside of Lance Isaacs and shutting the door firmly in his face for fourth.
Yeah, Lance Isaacs got sent one place back. Kershaw would then shove a nose up the inside, having to roll out as they went into the sweep. But the incredible Rocket coming off the line, Matthew Scholz knew that he was down on horsepower and he would have to do it all on brakes and mid-corner, and he was going to be the one to watch out for in this race. Sideways City, that's what we saw the whole way through, practice and qualifying out of Scholz.
Heron tried to go very early on, but just wasn't good enough on the brakes. Remember, Matthew Scholz on the old R1. The new one's not available to both him and to Sella and his teammate Brandon Good just yet. They'd hopefully be ready by the time we got to Cape Town.
The top three were starting to streak it away, and the pressure was now mounting. Onto the back straight, the Kawasaki shod riders would be able to start unleashing that massive horsepower and try their best to get around Scholzi, but Scholzi had that back end steering going, and his mid corner and exit speed were insane. The top end power of the Kawasaki's would eventually see them get there.
Replay off the line, you can see just a little bit of twitching there, and eventually the lights went out and we went rocking. The Schlanger Rocket from the second row, from fourth place on the grid, snuck through on both 1 and 2, had a little look there at Brent Heron as he came past him and got the whole shot.
That's what you call threading the needle. At the end of the first lap, though, the Kawasaki's were able to get through under big horsepower down the back straight, and it was Brent Heron who got one over on pole man Clinton Sella and would lead across the stripe.
Heron looking for his initial victory here in 2015, and hopefully one of many. As he crossed the line, you can see that how well the two Kawasaki's were getting away from that Yamaha. And I think both those Yamaha riders were looking and going, we can't wait for new machinery to arrive.
Yeah, that's all they're waiting for. They're making those calls to customs, making sure that their bikes are on, and as soon as they get on it, it's going to be a barrel of laughs. Already, though, Scholz was showing his form. Remember, last season, stepping out of the 600s onto the 1000s, and the slightly bigger frame of him is allowing him to ride that beast to its 150%.
As they come down the back straight, Lance Isaac started to close down as we saw a change for the lead for the first time. The Near Life Racing team man got up to the front of the field and now would show Brent Heron the way around the Phakisa Freeway. Down into Pirelli and into Geelkop, double right-hander, and it was all about Sella and Heron getting away from the rest of the field, and Isaacs closing in on Scholz.
Yeah, Sella was now wanting to get gone. This is the stage of the race that he would really throw it down and try and link together 4 or 5 laps to break the rest of the field. It would be super poles back to back. This was the move up the inside of the sweeper. Extremely close. Almost took the front end of Heron on, and Heron, just in the form of his life, would not back it down. He was going to try and hang on to that back wheel the whole way through the race.
So much so he nearly put a knee slider onto the back wheel. That's how close they got. Crossed the line, and Isaacs has got to third. Looking back over his shoulder, Scholz was worried because Kershaw was coming on the second of the BMWs. The Tsunami Beach bike was coming on strong. Speaking of coming on strong, Bo Levy on the KTM, Super M leader, and of course our race leader for the Super M category, getting up the inside of the Nashua MTech Yamaha.
Yeah, Bo was light years ahead of the rest of his category of racing in the Super M's and onto the back end of Goody. Out front, though, it was a massive story here because Kershaw was getting eaten up. Unfortunately, Scholz's big fade backwards was causing the two BMW riders a little bit of confusion. No one knew which line to pick.
And Isaacs had problems of his own, running out of brakes. He just wasn't able to get the BMW stopped. So all of a sudden it was Lance Isaacs falling by the wayside, and he would just try and survive to get as many points as possible.
Garrick Flock, seeing blood in the water, would be able to charge on through as Scholzi was overriding the Yamaha, the old shape Yamaha Big Banger, and at this stage he had just destroyed that back tire. That thing was not driving forward, it was just spinning.
Kershaw looking for a chance to sneak ahead of Matthew Scholz. Flock doing the same thing there to Isaacs. Isaacs would have to ride within the skills that he's picked up over the various seasons he's been racing superbikes. But further back in the battle for Super M, see just how well it was going there. Good to see the KTM boys giving it everything they can.
Neil van Loggenberg going at it with Shane Levy. So KTM versus Kawasaki this time around, a little bit further back in the field.
Eventually Kershaw got through on Scholz and tried to make a little bit of a gap on him. You could see just how hard Matthew Scholz had ridden in the first part of the race, and yes, those Pirellis were definitely crying out.
Yeah, there was nothing left. Kershaw, not the best start. It looked like he was going to be able to run with the early pace, and later on in the race, the wild child, Garrick Flock, pushed it a little bit too hard whilst he was still trying to get around Isaacs. I think he had to change a line and just went busting wide.
Yeah, up into turn 1 and into the kitty litter. Eventually got back on. Oh, and then right at the front of the field, incredibly, Harron going down in a big ball through Discover Digital, and that was him out of it. That would be Seller all on his own sim at the front.
Yeah, a big change up there. And that was Harron just trying to run with the late race pace of Seller. Seller's times weren't falling off. Unfortunately, what did fall off, apart from the timing clock, was Harron.
Yeah, a big mistake there from the youngster. He would definitely admit it was his own mistake, trying to push the bike too hard. Instead of settling for second place, he still wanted to give his good friend off the track, an arch rival on it, a good run for his money.
Massive shuffle out front then, and for the second time going and parking on the beach was the wild child, Garrick Flock. All that setup, all that work, and all that form and momentum that he carried forward from the end of the 2014 season looked like it was for nothing.
I remember he'd had podiums at the end of the season, so he was definitely disappointed with that. Now, as we got into the closing stages, it was all about the battle at the back of the podium, and it was all about Kershaw. Could Isaacs possibly sneak up and make it 2 BMWs on the podium? He had to get past Scholz.
Scholz was desperate at this stage. He'll have seen the demise of Harron out front, but there was absolutely no grip on the back end of that Yamaha. Likewise, there was no brakes on the front end of Isaacs's Black Swan Racing BMW. It was dramatic in the closing laps.
Yeah, incredible how Isaacs was using the back brake to that bike slowed down. There you can see once again how the back end stepped out under power. Just a little bit too hectic on there, but only Matthew Scholz would be able to recover from that.
Yeah, the most entertainment we have seen coming out of a 1000cc rider, and great to see that crossover style of Scholzi from World Super Sports to National Super 600s to Super GPs. What a show.
Yeah, awesome to see him in this kind of form. Looking forward to seeing him on the new bike later on in the season, but the 2 BMWs would hang on. Or could they? Only a couple of laps to go. Kershaw was now under threat. Isaacs could smell blood, and it was a kind of tsunami feel to it.
Isaacs was just crossing his fingers. He was obviously riding out of his skin, trying to figure things out, and one of those great riders with so much experience that he was able to ride around the problems. Scholz, there was nothing he could do. He was overriding that Yamaha. The best he would hope for was a 4th place, but 2nd place was still up for grabs, and the 2 BMWs were on good form. Isaacs, incredibly, had found a way to take the challenge all the way to Kershaw.
Yeah, the battle for the BMWs was for 2nd place. 1st place was all about this man, Neolife Racing's Clint Evil Knievel Seller, and the first race win of the season goes to Evil Knievel. Kershaw just hanging on to keep Isaacs out.
Incredible form and a long look over the shoulder to Seller and cementing his place as current and now defending champion in the 2015 season. Scholz on old equipment, way down on power with pretty much no rubber left on that tire. 4th for him.
Confirmation of Seller, Kershaw and Isaacs. As you said, Matthew Scholz in 4th, his teammate in 5th, Brandon Good, on the 2nd of the MTech Racing Yamahas. Garrick Flock would eventually pick it back up again and finish in 7th, just behind Brent Harron, another man who survived to pick the bike up and get back into the top 7.
In the Super M's, a win for Bo Levy, good enough to give him 8th place overall as well. He got the win ahead of Jannie Moll and Neil van Loggenberg. 3 KTMs would be on the podium ahead of Shane Levy and Gavin Breckel rounding it out.
We've been improving in every session. Unfortunately, in the race, my gear lever end broke off, so I had to make a plan to actually shift gears with like half my foot. So I'm pretty happy that I felt a lot better in the race and managed to come back and catch the rest of the guys. I ran out of laps, but race 2 will go better for sure.
What an amazing feeling. I needed a change, so we decided this year we're going to step up onto the 1000 and give it a go. And so far, it's looking good.
To get a gap, once I saw sort of around 10 seconds, I just wheeled it off. You know, the bikes are very different beasts to what they were last year. Last year, the suspension lasted the same virtually the whole race, whereas now you do see it different from lap 1 to lap 15. So I think it's going to be a bit of maintenance on rider and machine, but all these elements add for a fun day.
Join us after the break when we pick up on Heat 2 racing action from Super GP and Super M.
Our final bit of action for the Diode SuperGP Championship round number 1 from Phakisa Freeway is race 2 of the SuperGP and Super M's.
15 more laps and more than changeable conditions as well. The brothies aren't out just to protect the guys and get the girls holding them. They are out to keep the rain off. And when it's rainy here at Phakisa, it is a very hard circuit to manage.
Yeah, not going to be easy in terms of what you need to do. The rain flag has been shown, a wet race has been declared. It's up to the riders now to decide what tyres they're going to go out on. Are they going to go for the full wets, or are we going to see them on the slicks?
Most of the riders opting to go for a full dry setup. The wind mercifully taking those big dark clouds away. Everyone would be praying it stayed dry.
Lights out and down towards turn 1. Another good start from Matthew Skoltz. Would he be able to double up on the whole shot? This time out, it was the king and the number 1 plate who whole shot it. Skoltz around the outside, and on the inside, it was all about the BMW, the Black Swan BMW of Lance Isaacs. Round his outside was the second of those BMs, and in fact, trying to thread the needle early on was Kershaw.
Kershaw, just incredible, and what an arrival into Superbike racing, the big 1-litre capacity machines. 2 riders brand new to it this time around, and they were running in the top 4. Skoltzy third and Kershaw in 4th. Flock, incredibly enough, had started so well, he was running a 5th place just ahead of Brent Herron.
Isaacs using the changeable conditions to his advantage and getting ahead of the champion. And Sella, I think, would probably just sit behind him going, okay, if you want to run there for a bit, you can have it for a little while, but I'll come back at you a bit later on. That's if Kershaw didn't get through on him.
The Super M's were joining the party as well, but eventually they would start fading off. And looked like the Super M power delivery, I'm talking mainly about the KTMs, and the changeable conditions, was allowing them to run some good numbers. Skoltzy had started to fade backwards, and he was now in a bit of a ding-dong battle. The wildest style against the wildest child. Skoltz versus Flock.
Onto the back straight. Flock would probably have the advantage in terms of the power, but because of the drive that he was able to get, Matthew Skoltz just managed to keep him out. Here's a replay of the start. Brandon Good with probably the best start out of everybody. Just couldn't quite get up the inside and make it stick. And he eventually lost out to Kershaw, who went around his outside. Remember, turn 1 at Phakisa is a very wide corner. There's lots of grip right to the edge of the track.
Yeah, Good admitted coming in after heat number 1 that he just couldn't get the hookup going off the start line. There is a procedure that you have to get the bike into. He dialed it in for race number 2, and he was trying to run the pace early on.
Isaac's trying to get away at the early stages and open up a little bit of a margin. Sella wasn't going to allow him to do that. Quickest man on track, though, was Brent Herron, and he was slowly but surely reeling in the top 5, starting with Kershaw.
Again, between the races, Herron just saying, complete rider error. The bike was dialed in absolutely perfect. He tried to push the pace in a place that he shouldn't have, and this time around, he was going to have to go after it. Unfortunately, in the early stages, getting stuck behind riders, eventually getting through on Kershaw, but getting stuck behind the riders would slow his drive, and he would have a long, hard, race-long battle to get up to the race leaders.
The progress was slow, but it was progress nonetheless, but it was going to be difficult. Kershaw coming straight back at him and just returning the favor, saying, you're going to have to work harder than that, Brent.
Yeah, that little battle running outside of the top 4, slowing the pace, and Herron was in big trouble. He would not be able to get onto the back wheel of Isaacs for a very long time, and Kershaw coming off his first podium at the first time of asking in heat number 1.
Pretty much fired up. That's what I would have to say. Certainly getting to grips with a litre bike very, very quickly. And he's a slightly smaller rider than what Herron was, but just as strong and certainly a fit man, and looking forward to seeing what he's going to do this season.
Out front, though, Sella and Isaacs were matching each other lap for lap. It was good to see Isaacs be able to bounce back and find that form. Always seems to run good in the second heats, no matter which track we go to.
Here's a replay of Herron going up on the inside, just timing it to perfection over the hump and into turn 2, makes it stick.
Such a technical pass, really very, very hard. You're making the pass and you're gearing down as you come up and over. The bike gets light. You've got to make sure you're in that position. But Kershaw has got such a good setup on that Tsunami Beach Bar BMW that he's able to fight back, and Herron has to do it all once again.
Just past the halfway stage, you can see Herron still had not found a way past Kershaw. Kershaw, though, the two of them were working nicely together and slowly but surely reeling in the other 2 riders just up the road.
Yeah, it was Kershaw who was just enjoying the setup a little bit better. This time around, Clinton Sella seemed like he was just playing the game. Able, definitely, to run faster laps than Isaacs. Isaacs, though, was just showing the wheel every now and again and trying to run the pace. It would be a couple more laps until Sella just dropped it and would start to stretch away.
With the conditions being the way they were, there was definitely not going to be a change in the 1:37 lap record we'd seen in race 1 from Sella. and into the 39s is all they could do here in these very tricky conditions.
Yeah, we know that Isaacs has got a ton of experience in these conditions, so he may be able to manage it. But remember, it was a different beast, a brand new bike for him, and he was still trying to work out the kinks. Kershaw, though, was looking extremely comfortable and able to hold off constant charges and constant passing efforts from Herron.
The way that they were developing that bike, BMW South Africa had actually brought in 2 technicians to help Lance Isaacs out on the weekend to get it all set up. So it wasn't quite on song just yet. Rob Holder, the ex-BMW man, of course, was with Nicholas Kershaw, and his bike was certainly looking good.
Running behind these guys was Flock. He was running some good pace. Again, up and over. The perfect passing point for Herron as he got in front and this time around would try and defend. Flock was there running in 5th place, but he just could not close things down. The Yamaha boys this time around unable to be that shining light that they were in heat number 1.
So all about the battle for 3 and 4. As you could see, Herron now started to close in and decided, you know what, there's a chance I can catch Isaacs and maybe spoil his day. He'd bring Kershaw along for the ride, but the two of them would have to work together if they wanted to bridge that gap.
The Super M's further down weren't coping as well as they would like, and they would become lappers very shortly as the top 4 riders came flying through.
Breckel would be one of them, Neil van Rockenberg would be the other, but Isaacs now all on his own, so about 3 seconds adrift to the leader, Clint. Isaacs was a bit concerned about the riders coming from behind, and I would be too, because Herron and Kershaw started to put in their hot laps right in the end.
At the 3/4 marker, it was obvious that Isaacs either didn't have the setup or inclination to go chasing down on the champ.
There was the gap. Isaacs from Herron from Kershaw on the back straight into the sweeper, and just a matter of time before that checkered flag came out.
Clinton Seller had done a very clever job. He'd got himself into a good position out front. He'd allowed Isaacs to come with him in the early part of the race. As soon as he got comfortable and familiar with the conditions, he checked out once again and left the rest of the guys in his wake. Herron, though, towards the end of the race, put in some of the best laps of the race.
With 2 to go, it was all about whether Herron could catch Isaacs. And that's everybody was talking about. As they came across the line, you could see the different body language between those 2 riders. Lance Isaacs taking it easy, trying to survive the race. Herron on attack.
Yeah, he definitely was on attack mode. A 2nd place would set him up perfectly. Remember, he was in 2nd in heat number 1 before he went down, and he dropped almost all the way to the back of the pack. This time around, he desperately needed as many points on the table before they left round number 1 here at Phakisa.
It was important to get up ahead of Isaacs, but Isaacs wouldn't make it easy for him. Even though it looked like he'd rolled out, he'd just enough gap here to keep Herron at bay. And would there be any changes between 2 and 3?
Kershaw was on for a good overall as he stayed constant, running a gap off the back of Brent Herron, but he was still rock solid in 4th place, and that would give him a top 3 overall, leaving round number 1.
Problems for the 2 Yamaha riders in the background. They actually fell behind Garrick Flock. Brandon Good, the lead Yamaha rider, beating his teammate Matthew Skoltz for 6th and 7th place on track. So it looks like the 2 Yamaha boys and the MTech team just doing the best they can on the old machinery, waiting for the new bikes, and hopefully going to be at the front by the time they get here.
Flock had a much better run, much better starting of the race, and that allowed him to run early on and try and match the pace. Herron, though, time was running out for him to close things down.
A lap and a half to go, and Isaacs was being closed down, but Herron didn't have enough time to get past him, I don't think.
Yeah, at the late stage, it looked like the BMW was starting to lose traction on the back end, and Isaacs, just by his body language, was worried. Starting to look over his shoulder every single time he got on the gas. Also, the back end of the bike was starting to wag around, but there were obviously problems across the board. Isaacs had to work very hard at the beginning of the race. Now at the end, he was working even harder, and there was tension out there on the lead BMW.
Kawasaki was definitely looking dangerous. You could see that Cancella had also rolled out. What was about 7 seconds had come down to about 3.5, and probably come down to about 3 seconds as they crossed the line. But Herron now was the man on the chase. He only had 3 corners to do it, and unfortunately just too far back for my liking to make an attempt at Lance Isaacs.
Yeah, definitely maybe 2 more laps to go, but remember, he had his problems in race number 1. He would at least be rewarded and be able to leave round number 1 with a podium position. The window and the flag once again, and the perfect start to his defense of the National Championship crown went to Clinton Seller. A very pumped up Lance Isaacs was able to get that 2nd place, so he's also started off his campaign with plenty of numbers on the page.
A nice start there for the BMW team. A good recovery, though, came from Brent Herron to finish in 3rd place and get back up onto the podium. Nicholas Kershaw would eventually finish in 4th, beating out Garrick Flock. Brandon Good beat his teammate to the line as well in 6th place, with Scholz in 7th. And a good effort there from our Super GP riders. Matt, one thing to take into account is that if Kinsella is able to keep up this dominance, has anybody got what it takes to take the battle to him?
The BMWs are definitely on form, and Isaacs is a championship racer. He'll be in it to win it every single round, but Harron definitely looks like the danger man. In the Super M's, Bo Levy gets the perfect finish for the day. 2 wins for him, ahead of Jannie Moll and Van Loggenberg.
Firstly, I think everyone a huge apology. All the guys, Dave, Postlethwaite, Gavin Peterson, my dad, Ara, KMSA, everyone that's been involved with me, Moroso Pipes, DNA Air Filters, 40 Wings range of beds, all been putting their effort into me, and I went and did that in the first race. I saw I got the quickest lap, and I was starting to catch Clint and just push way too hard going into Coke bottle. So big mistake on my behalf, and I think the second race now I definitely had more pace in me, but saw a bit of a split on my visor, and rather back off and get points and not to repeat what I did in race 1.
It actually helps when the gear lever stays on. But yeah, you know, it's really nobody's fault in the first race. Those things happen. Yeah, definitely we made a few changes to the suspension. You know, like I said, we're learning as we go along, and we definitely went a lot better. I think Clint was a little bit tentative in the first half of the race, and I managed to, you know, just stick with him. His bike has definitely got the edge around here. I think this track really suits the Kawasaki. But, you know, we're still learning on the BMW, and we can only get better from here. You know, the Black Swan Energy BMW Motorrad BMW S1000 is running well. I can't complain. We're getting better and better. We'll see what happens come mid-season.
We had a little bit of a hiccups in the off-season with regard to some manufacturers and stuff like that. So it was a challenge. We didn't ride a lot at all. So it just shows the quality of the team and the people working on these motorcycles that no matter what, we come out and the bike's working straight away. So I'm quite blessed for the team that I have and the people that surround me when we come to go ride motorbikes.
You've thrown the gauntlet down to everybody else, and it looks like the challenge is going to be taken up, probably from Lance, probably from Kershaw. I know that Harron's going to be back, and possibly and hopefully by the time we get to Swartkorps, a couple more riders come into play too.
Yeah, that'd be nice. I think with it being a little bit more of a local round, we get some guys, a few track specialists, but you know, I've been around there a couple of times myself, so it should be good fun. Yeah, definitely. You know, the more people at the front of the grid, the more manufacturers mixing it up is what's going to make this series go from strength to strength.
So coming out of round number 1 of the Diode Super GP Champions Trophy here at Phakisa, our defending champions in the Super 600s and Super GPs are once again the men to beat. But also, here at round number 1, it was the arrival of the Super Juniors and some new, young talent of the future.
Round 1 of the Digital Entertainment On Demand Super GP Champions Trophy is proudly brought to you by Diode and their associate sponsors.